You may have seen this design at my live J shows or in the John Henry Sympathy book. It's been in Floracraft ads. And this year, it's even featured in the John Henry calendar. Today on JTV, you'll learn the secrets to creating it for yourself. With a few unexpected techniques, you can create this artistic tablescape. So let's get started. The first thing we have to do is create the base for our spheres of roses. Today, we're going to use a Never Wilt casket saddle. This is the triple saddle, and the key behind Never Wilt is the fact that it never leaks. I'll show you how it works with an empty one first. As we stick flowers into the foam, it displaces water. That water would run out into the tray. The water's able to drain down inside those holes. That prevents it from leaking on anything. Never Wilt, never leaks. We've used 3 deluxe blocks of artesia and placed them on our saddle. Next, we're going to add the patented locking brackets. They fit into the holes on the bottom of the triple saddle. And when we push down on them, they lock into place. You'll want to listen for the audible pop that you hear when they lock into place. That lets me know it's locked and secured. We'll do it on the other side. We line it up with the hole and push down. We always want to hear that audible pop so that we know they've locked in place. We'll go ahead and add the other 4. There's 2 per block. They also make a double saddle and a single saddle that hold 2 blocks of foam and also 1 block of foam. Now our 3 blocks of deluxe artesia are locked in place. I selected the deluxe formula because it's the most firm and it's going to hold securely our mechanics for putting the spheres of roses in place. We're using spheres of artesia today, and that brings us to the JTV trick of the week. When we use an artesia sphere, we want to wrap it with anchor tape. I'm using 1/4-inch waterproof tape and wrapping it around my sphere. The reason that I do this is to hold the foam together. As I'm making placements of roses into the sphere, if 3 of those stems should meet in the middle, it would be possible for me to pop a portion of that sphere out. This anchor tape is a modern form of chicken wire that allows me to keep the sphere together. We all used chicken wire in the old days. It would tear up our hands. The anchor tape is a great way for us to use that same concept, but it's more user-friendly. We're using 3 sizes of spheres. I have the 3-inch, the 4-inch, and the 6-inch. I float soaked every one ahead of time so that they were all completely saturated, and I've wrapped them with the anchor tape. This one I want to use in 2 places, so I'm going to divide it in half. Here's another quick trick from JTV. We're going to use the bullion wire, and we simply slide it through our sphere. That allows us to cut it in half perfectly. Those pieces can go on top, but first I'll wrap them with anchor tape. We'll place one at the far end of our saddle and one a little bit towards the middle, so we can keep up the asymmetrical shape of our project. We'll also use another sphere on top right here. varying those sizes. Now comes the part where we attach them to the base itself. We're going to do that using the hyacinth stakes from Coe Pick. We simply poke these through and into the artesia blocks at the bottom. We'll use several hyacinth stakes per sphere. We place them at opposing angles through the sphere and into the bottom foam. We want to push down on these hard too to make sure that they go all the way to our never wilt base. Five usually holds one in place. Then we come back and trim those. It's the same method over here, placing those all the way through and down to our never wilt base. Because we place them at opposing angles, it prevents them from pulling off. We can even balance a sphere up on the corner and send that hyacinth stake through at an opposing angle. That allows us to defy gravity just a little bit. We'll continue adding our spheres. I've pre-selected how many different spheres I'm going to use in this design. You can choose to do as many as you'd like. You also don't have to use a triple saddle. You could use a smaller one and use 4 or 5 spheres. The creative answers and decisions are up to you. When we add them on the side, we simply place that hyacinth stake as far into the foam as we possibly can. We can also use the smaller spheres and extend them out from our design. We insert 3 hyacinth stakes and then push our sphere onto those extended stakes. This works good with the small size. We wouldn't want to try it with the larger sizes because the weight would be too much. It also adds to the balance of our design because we go from larger spheres to smaller spheres on the outskirts. Now, if I wanted to add a larger sphere right here, I need a little bit more surface underneath this. We've got one more 6-inch sphere, and if I put it out there, it's going to be a little bit too far. I'll grab my foam knife. We'll cut away a portion of the artesia, which will allow us to sit that into our arrangement a little bit further and get more of the saddle underneath. We also want to make sure that we've got those hyacinth stakes down towards the bottom of our sphere. This is a natural wood dye that's on the Coe picks themselves. That's why it's coloring my hands a little bit as they get wet. But it washes right off. These last 3 we'll make and set directly on the table. That way we can extend the surface of our arrangement out onto the surface we're decorating. Now we're ready to add our roses. I also want to select what sizes and shapes I'm going to put on each one of the spheres. For our project, we're going to use each of the new varieties that Euphoria Flowers is introducing this year. The first color I'm going to use is Alhambra. I'll use it in the center because of its great vibrant color. It's going to create a dynamic, colorful focal area for us. We're cutting the roses short and placing them directly into the foam. If I made the stems too long, they'd all start to run into each other on the inside. Or I can make the stems longer and increase the surface area and make the sphere actually bigger. In this case, I want to stick with about the 6-inch size. So we're going to insert them all the way in and tuck them right up next to the foam. This way, they'll last a lot longer as well. When you get your Euphoria roses in, they'll be nice and tight. That's a key to traveling safely. You want to give them time to open up. As they open, the bloom progresses and gets even more beautiful. A small, tight bloom can grow into a huge-sized rose. Now you might be thinking, Jay, why did you get that long-stemmed rose when you were only going to use it this long? To get a bigger-sized head, we need a longer stem. So if I want that large-sized Euphoria head, it doesn't grow on a little short stem. It grows on a nice long stem. The longer the stem, the bigger the head. So I need to get long-stemmed roses, even if I'm going to cut them off short. Now we can move on to a different variety. This variety is called Old Dutch. It has an incredible antiqued look, and the blossoms are smaller. So I'll select a smaller sphere to fill in with our Old Dutch roses. We have to remember to cut our stems shorter and gauge them to the size of the sphere that we're using. It's also great to have a rose like this, smaller sized, as an accent in bouquets, so that you have variations in sizes. You don't want all giant roses or all small roses. It's the difference in texture that we experience in many of the projects we make here at JTV. For example, look at the size of a pop-off or a polar star rose. There's a big difference, but adding 3 sizes together really creates a differentiation in texture and scale. That's an important element and principle when we're working with floral design. Now is a perfect opportunity for me to plan out the rest of my project. I can take one of each of the new varieties and decide where I'm going to place them and in which sphere. We'll use Polar Star because it's large here next to our Alhambra. Pop-off will be good on the other side. I use the larger roses in my larger spheres. This one's called Red Naomi. We'll use it down here, right next to Alhambra, because the contrast of red and orange is great. Here's a brand new winner, Sweet Avalanche, the same size and shape as an avalanche rose, but only in a pink that's reminiscent of Bianca candy. One of my favorites, Marrakesh. That chocolate color looks a lot like Old Dutch. We'll put it over here. Riverdale, yellow, orange, and red, all together in the center. That's an impactful way for us to increase the focal area. The soft peach of Tinkerbell will balance out well with Sweet Avalanche. So let's put it back here and also down in front. We also have a smaller white, Eskimo, which will be good here to balance out with our Polar Star. It's always important when you watch white in an arrangement so that it doesn't all fall into one area. I wanted to spread it out and keep it on both sides of the design. The Tinkerbell works well with it too. One of my favorites, Ranuncula. Let's do it right up here, and we'll also put it down on the table. finally, Nightingale. He can go here. That leaves me one open on this side, but I can make that decision a little bit later as to what we'll add there. Now, I can grab my roses and fill in the rest of our project. There, all our beautiful Euphoria roses are in place. I want to use a couple techniques to change up the texture of a few of these spheres. So we're going to add some ribbon and some acolytes to make this even more glorious. Took the liberty of cutting a couple pieces of ribbon, one that's a sheer that's going to go really well with the Marrakesh, the other that's a stripe that's going to pop this Alhambra. I cut them in lengths that are about 6 inches long. We're simply just going to use our chopstick and poke them in. They almost disappear. I don't want them to overshadow the rose, but I want to have them give it a different texture. Using the back end of the chopstick so that I don't poke right through the ribbon. We're adding them in between the open blossoms. This just shows you how that method adds those textures and patterns together. That's a trend that's very popular today. Now we'll add our sheer to the Marrakesh. We're going to leave it out a little bit further because it's translucent. We can see through it. And that makes us appreciate that caramel color of Marrakesh even more. It also gives it a completely different texture than the one in the center. I cut this ribbon on the bias as well. That one I cut straight to go along with the stripes. This way we get little points on the end of our ribbon. There. Now that's making those two spheres a little bit different and adding a little bit more of that kaleidoscope effect to our extravagant centerpiece. We'll now move on to the acolytes. We've got two different kinds. I chose to use the yellow and the purple. Because the floralites from Acolyte come with this little elastic strap, and I don't need them and they might get in the way for this project, I'm just going to cut those off. I'm going to use the lavender floralites to accentuate the Nightingale roses. We're going to place these right in between the roses down into the foam. We can push this end directly down into the foam and it's going to hold it securely. The acolytes will burn for about 36 hours. So if we want to get this all ready for a party and pull these just before, we can do that too. But be confident that they're going to last for at least a day and a half. We'll also add the yellow ones to our Riverdale. because we have two spheres, I'm going to split the package between these two. Wow, that makes for an opulent and lavish centerpiece. With the tricks you learned today at JTV, you can make this. Maybe for your next dinner party, just a few flowers out of the garden. Ha, right, if your garden is the Kensington Palace Gardens. But you can use any type of flower. Pom-poms, carnations. But this impressive one with Euphorbia roses makes this one of the prettiest centerpieces on the planet. We learned a lot about beautiful roses today. Euphorbia Flowers is the premier grower of boutique roses, all American grown in Nipomo, California. An impressive kaleidoscope of new varieties in fashion colors. And construction is the key to every design we make. I'd like to thank my friends at Euphorbia Flowers for taking the time and making the effort to select new varieties every year, and for growing the prettiest roses on the planet. It's a pleasure for me to design with them all the time. For your personal copy of the Euphorbia Rose Gallery, go to the JTV store and get your copy today. Or contact them for more information about the prettiest roses on the planet for your next project at www.euphorbiaflowers.com. Or better yet, and easier still, click on the Euphorbia logo right up there.